The darkness of space near Neptune suddenly filled with light. Thousands of massive ships appeared from nowhere, their hulls gleaming like metal mountains against the black void. The largest vessels stretched for miles, their surfaces covered in weapon ports and strange alien symbols that glowed with a cold blue light. Admiral Kethavar stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. His reptilian features showed satisfaction as he watched his great fleet take formation around him. 3,000 warships had answered his call, each one capable of destroying a planet. The scaly skin around his yellow eyes crinkled with what his species considered a smile. "Report," Kethavar commanded in his harsh voice. "All ships have arrived safely, Admiral," replied his second-in-command, General Thexron. "The hyperspace jump was perfect. We are now at the edge of the human solar system." Kethavar nodded slowly. For 17 star systems, his fleets had brought the word of the Zephyrian hegemony to primitive races. Some had surrendered immediately, others had tried to fight. All had fallen. The humans would be no different. "What do our scouts tell us about these creatures?" Kethavar asked. Thexron activated a holographic display showing Earth and its surrounding planets. "The humans are a young species, Admiral. They have barely left their home world. Their technology is primitive. They still use chemical rockets and simple energy weapons. Their largest ships are smaller than our fighters." The Admiral studied the display with interest. The third planet from their star looked green and blue, covered in water, and what the humans called land. Billions of the creatures lived there, packed together like insects in a hive. "They have been broadcasting into space for over a century," Thexron continued. "Our intelligence teams have studied their transmissions. They show us a species that enjoys violence but is poorly organized. They fight among themselves constantly. Their weapons are crude. They have no unity." Kethavar had seen the human broadcasts himself, movies and television shows that depicted their military forces, clumsy soldiers with basic weapons, ships that moved slowly through space, leaders who argued instead of acting. It would be almost too easy. "Any defensive installations?" he asked. "Nothing significant, Admiral. A few space stations around their home world. Some small outposts in the outer system. Their most advanced facility appears to be a research station near one of the gas giants. Far from the alien fleet, Captain Jake Morrison sat in the command center of Earth Defense Station Titan's Gate. The station hung in space near Neptune, disguised to look like a simple research outpost. Its hull was painted white and covered with scientific equipment that actually worked. To any outside observer, it appeared to be exactly what it claimed to be. Morrison was a tall man with graying hair and calm blue eyes. He had commanded deep space stations for 15 years, and nothing usually surprised him anymore. But when Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez called out from her communication station, her voice carried a note he had never heard before. "Captain, you need to see this," she said, her hands moving quickly over her controls. Morrison walked to her station and looked at the main display screen. What he saw made his blood run cold. Hundreds of contacts were appearing on the long-range sensors, then thousands. Each one was massive, far larger than anything humanity had ever built. "How many?" Morrison asked quietly. 3,000 ships, sir," Rodriguez replied, her voice barely steady. "The smallest ones are 2 miles long, the largest are over 10 miles. Morrison felt his mouth go dry. In all the years that Earth had been preparing for this moment, no one had imagined an invasion force this large. The aliens had brought enough firepower to turn every planet in the solar system into dust. "Get me a direct link to Earth Central Command," Morrison ordered. "Priority Alpha. Tell them the moment we've all been waiting for has arrived." As Rodriguez worked to establish the connection, Morrison watched the alien fleet organize itself. The ships moved with perfect coordination, forming battle groups and defensive formations. Whoever commanded them knew what they were doing. The communication link crackled to life. Admiral Pete Sullivan's face appeared on the screen, his expression grim but determined. Sullivan was Earth's top military commander, a man who had spent his entire career preparing for this day. "Jake, what's your status?" Sullivan asked. 3,000 alien warships have just arrived at Neptune's orbit," Morrison reported. They're organized in battle formation. This is not a peaceful first. Contact. Sullivan nodded grimly. Understood. Begin recording everything. We need to know what we're dealing with. Back on the Zephyrian flagship, Admiral Kethvar was growing impatient. His fleet had been in position for several minutes, and the humans had not yet responded to their presence. Perhaps they were too primitive to even detect the arrival of the Armada. Send a message to the third planet, he commanded. Standard surrender terms. A communications officer began transmitting on all human frequencies. The message was simple and direct, translated into the dominant human languages by computers that had studied their broadcasts for years. Primitive species of the third planet, the message began. You are now subjects of the Zephyrian hegemony. Surrender immediately, and your deaths will be quick. Resist, and your world will burn. You have one of your hours to respond. The message reached Earth in minutes. In command centers around the planet, human leaders listened to the alien ultimatum with a mixture of fear and anger. But they had been preparing for this moment for decades. Admiral Sullivan sat in the Global Defense Command Center, deep beneath the mountains of Colorado. Around him, the greatest military minds of Earth waited for his response. The room was filled with screens showing the alien fleet, Earth's hidden defenses, and communication links to every major military installation on the planet. Open a channel to the alien fleet, Sullivan ordered. The communication officer nodded. Channel. Open, sir. Sullivan looked directly into the camera, his face hard as stone. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of an entire species that had just been threatened. Unknown vessels, you have violated sovereign human space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. The message traveled back to the alien fleet in minutes. When it was translated and played for Admiral Kethvar, the Zephyrian commander could not believe what he was hearing. The hairless apes were actually threatening him. Him, Kethvar the Conqueror, who had crushed civilizations that had traveled between stars for thousands of years. General Thexron began to laugh, a sound like rocks grinding together. Admiral, they actually think they can fight us. Other officers on the command deck joined in the laughter. The idea was absurd. These humans had barely learned to leave their atmosphere, and they were challenging the might of the hegemony. Kethvar raised a clawed hand for silence. These creatures amuse me, he said. They will learn the price of defying the hegemony. But first, let us give them a demonstration of our power. He turned to his weapons officer. Target the small outpost near the large planet. Destroy it completely. Let the humans watch as their people die. The weapons officer began preparing the attack. On his targeting screen, the small human station appeared as a tiny dot of light. It would take only one shot from their main guns to vaporize it completely. Captain Morrison watched the alien fleet begin to move. Long-range sensors showed one of their largest ships breaking away from the main formation and heading directly toward his station. He knew what was coming. All hands, prepare for combat, he announced over the station's communication system. This is not a drill. Amy Rodriguez looked up from her station with fear in her eyes. Captain, what do we do? Morrison smiled grimly. We show them what happens when someone threatens Earth. The Zephyrian dreadnought Voidrender moved through space like a mountain of death. 10 miles long and bristling with weapons, it dwarfed the small human outpost that hung near Neptune like a metal insect. Captain Vorthak commanded the massive ship with the confidence of someone who had destroyed 100 worlds. Target acquired, reported his weapons officer. The human station shows no defensive capabilities, no shields, no significant weapons. This will be over quickly. Vorthak studied the small station on his main screen. It looked pathetic compared to his mighty warship. A few communication arrays, some scientific equipment, and what appeared to be living quarters for maybe 50 humans. He almost felt sorry for them. Charge the main plasma cannon, he ordered. One shot should vaporize their entire facility. On Titan's gate, Captain Morrison watched the alien dreadnought approach. The massive ship grew larger on his screens. With each passing minute, its hull covered in weapon ports that glowed with threatening energy. Morrison had seen the technical specifications in classified briefings, but seeing the real thing was different. The ship was a monument to destruction. "Captain, they're charging weapons," reported Lieutenant Rodriguez from her sensor station. "Energy readings are off the charts." Morrison nodded calmly. "Bobby, are you ready down there?" In the station's engineering section, Chief Engineer Bobby Chen looked up from his control panel. Around him, machinery hummed with barely contained power. Equipment that looked like simple research tools but was actually something far more advanced. "All systems green, Captain," Chen replied. "The gravity field generators are online and ready." Chen was a small man with quick hands and a brilliant mind. For 5 years he had worked on the station's hidden systems, equipment that the aliens would never expect to find on what appeared to be a simple research outpost. The technology was so advanced that even most humans didn't know it existed. "Remember, the timing," Morrison said over the communication link. "Wait until they fire. We need them committed to the attack." The Void Render continued its approach, now close enough that the humans could see individual weapon ports along its hull. The ship was beautiful in a terrible way, its alien design both elegant and menacing. Morrison wondered how many worlds had seen this sight as their last. "Plasma cannon at full charge," announced the Zephyrian weapons officer. "Ready to fire on your command, Captain." Vorthak looked at the human station one last time. Such a small target to destroy with such a large weapon. But orders were orders, and Admiral Kethavar wanted a demonstration of power. "Fire," he commanded. The Void Render's main weapon discharged with tremendous force. A beam of superheated plasma, bright as a small star, lanced out toward the human station. The beam carried enough energy to melt through solid rock, enough power to crack a moon in half. "Incoming plasma beam," Rodriguez reported, her voice tight with fear. "Impact in 30 seconds. Morrison felt sweat on his forehead, but kept his voice steady. "Bobby, now would be good." In engineering, Chen's hands moved over his controls with practiced precision. Around the station, hidden devices that had been built into the hull began to activate. Gravity field generators that had taken humanity's best scientists decades to develop came online in perfect synchronization. The space around Titan's Gate began to change in ways that were invisible to normal sensors. Gravity fields twisted and bent, creating currents and eddies in the fabric of space itself. The station sat at the center of a web of gravitational forces that could bend light itself. The plasma beam reached the edge of the gravity field, and something impossible happened. Instead of continuing in a straight line toward the human station, the deadly energy beam began to curve. The gravitational forces caught it like water flowing around a stone, redirecting its path in a great arc. "What is happening?" Vorthak demanded as he watched his weapons fire bend away from its target. His science officer studied his instruments with confusion. "Captain, I'm reading massive gravitational distortions around the human station. The energy beam is being deflected, but the beam wasn't just being deflected. The gravity field was doing something far more clever. As the plasma arc completed its curve, it began to circle back toward its point of origin. The deadly energy that had been meant to destroy the human station was now heading directly for the Void Render. "Evasive action," Vorthak ordered, but his massive ship was too large and slow to avoid its own weapon. The plasma beam struck the Zephyrian dreadnought amidships, punching through shields that had been designed to deflect enemy fire, not absorb. The ship's own weapons. Explosions rippled along the hull as the beam burned through armor plating and into the ship's core systems. "Hull breach on decks 40 through 60, reported the damage control officer. "Main power is fluctuating. Weapons, systems are offline." Vorthak stared at his screens in disbelief. The humans had somehow turned his own weapon against him. It was impossible. Their technology was primitive. They were supposed to be helpless prey. Another explosion shook the ship as secondary systems began to fail. The massive dreadnought that had destroyed planets was being torn apart by its own firepower, redirected by technology that shouldn't exist. "Abandon ship," Vorthak ordered as his command deck filled with smoke and sparks. The Void Render died in a series of brilliant explosions that lit up space for millions of miles. When the light faded, nothing remained but scattered debris and the fading glow of dissipating plasma. On the Zephyrian flagship, Admiral Kethavar watched the destruction of his dreadnought with growing rage and confusion. An entire warship, one of his most powerful, had been destroyed by a tiny human outpost that shouldn't have been able to scratch its paint. "How is this possible?" he demanded of his science officers. General Thexeron studied the sensor readings, with growing concern. "Admiral, the humans somehow manipulated gravitational forces. The technology required for such an achievement would be far beyond what we observed in their broadcasts." Kethavar's yellow eyes narrowed. "Are you suggesting that these primitives have been deceiving us?" "It's possible, sir. The destruction of the Void Render was not luck. It was a deliberate tactical maneuver using advanced technology." On Earth, Dr. Lisa Park worked frantically in her laboratory beneath the Luna Research Facility. The debris from the destroyed alien ship was already being collected by automated probes, and the first samples were arriving for analysis. Park was a materials scientist who specialized in alien technology, though until today her work had been purely theoretical. She had studied every piece of information about potential alien threats, preparing for the day when humanity would face visitors from the stars. Initial analysis complete, she reported to Admiral Sullivan via secure communication link. The alien ship used energy-based shielding rather than physical armor. Their weapons are powerful, but their defenses are vulnerable to kinetic attacks. Sullivan nodded grimly. The information was valuable, but it also confirmed his worst fears. The aliens had brought thousands of ships, each one capable of destroying cities. Even with their technological advantages, humanity was severely outnumbered. "What about their weapons?" Sullivan asked. "Plasma-based energy systems," Park replied. "Very destructive, but they require significant power generation. If we can disrupt their power systems, their weapons become useless." In the Global Defense Command Center, General Rick Hayes coordinated with military leaders around the world. Hidden beneath the surfaces of asteroids, moons, and planets, humanity's true defensive network was coming online. Weapons platforms that had been disguised as mining operations, research stations, and communication relays were revealing their true nature. Commander Kate Miller reported from a concealed base on Mars. "All defensive positions are ready, General. The aliens have no idea what they're flying into." The network that humanity had built was the result of 50 years of careful planning and preparation. Every major asteroid in the solar system contained hidden weapons. Every seemingly innocent space station was actually a fortress. Every research facility was also a military base. Back near Neptune, Captain Morrison surveyed the wreckage of the alien dreadnought through his station's telescopes. Pieces of the massive ship drifted slowly through space, some still glowing from the heat of destruction. "Captain," Rodriguez called out. "Admiral Kethavar is transmitting again." Morrison nodded. "Let's hear what he has to say now." The alien admiral's face appeared on the main screen, his reptilian features twisted with rage. When he spoke, his voice carried a cold fury that had not been there before. "Humans of the third planet," Kethavar began, "you have destroyed one of our ships through treachery and deception. This act will not go unpunished. We will crush your pathetic species and burn your world to ash." The transmission ended, leaving the command center in silence. Morrison looked around at his crew, all of them young men and women who had volunteered to serve on the most dangerous posting in human space. They had known this day might come, and now it was here. "Rodriguez, send a message to Admiral Sullivan," Morrison ordered. "Tell him the aliens are angry. They know we're not as helpless as we pretended to be." As the message traveled back to Earth, the Zephyrian fleet began to move. 3,000 warships turned toward the inner solar system, their hulls gleaming with deadly intent. Admiral Kethavar's fleet moved through the asteroid belt like a metal river of death. 3,000 ships advanced in perfect formation, their weapons charged and ready to destroy anything that stood in their path. The Admiral had learned to respect human deception, but he was confident that overwhelming force would crush any resistance. "Maintain tight formation," Kethavar commanded from his flagship. "These humans are clever, but they cannot stand against our full might." General Thexeron studied the tactical displays that showed thousands of asteroids drifting around them. "Admiral, our sensors detect a small human operation ahead. It appears to be a mining facility. Kethvar looked at the display with interest. A single human ship was visible among the asteroids, along with what appeared to be mining equipment, attached to several large rocks. The ship was broadcasting a distress signal on human frequencies. A mining ship, Kethvar said with contempt. They probably think they can hide among the rocks like insects. The human vessel was tiny compared to his massive warships, maybe 300 feet long and clearly designed for cargo rather than combat. Its hull was covered with the scars and dents that came from years of working in the asteroid belt, moving between rocks and collecting valuable metals. Captain Tony Blake commanded the cargo vessel New Frontier from a cramped bridge that smelled of oil and recycled air. Blake was a tough man with calloused hands and sharp eyes who had spent 20 years working the belt. To any observer, he was exactly what he appeared to be, a space miner caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. Unknown alien vessels, Blake transmitted on open frequencies. This is Captain Blake of the New Frontier. We're just a mining operation. We don't want any trouble. Blake's crew of 12 worked at their stations around him, all of them dressed in the rough clothes of asteroid miners. Their ship's cargo bay was filled with what appeared to be refined metals and mining equipment. Everything looked completely normal, but appearances could be deceiving. Hidden beneath the false cargo bay floor, 40 human Special Forces soldiers waited in powered armor. Commander Helen Wright led the team, each member trained for zero gravity combat and armed with weapons designed specifically for fighting in space. The mining equipment attached to nearby asteroids wasn't for extracting metals. It was an elaborate weapon system that had taken 3 years to install. The Zephyrian fleet barely slowed as it passed the small human operation. To Admiral Kethvar, the mining ship was beneath notice, too small and helpless to pose any threat to his mighty armada. His ships moved past in tight formation, so close together that their energy fields overlapped. "Ignore the mining vessel," Kethvar ordered. "We have more important targets to destroy." Captain Blake waited until the alien fleet was completely past his position before he spoke into his communication system. "Right, you're clear to proceed." Commander Wright's voice came back immediately. "Understood, Captain. All teams in position." What happened next would later be called the Asteroid Belt Massacre in Zephyrian military records. The mining charges attached to nearby asteroids weren't for breaking up rock. They were fusion bombs designed to create a chain reaction among the tightly packed alien ships. Wright triggered the first device, and a ball of nuclear fire bloomed among the asteroid fragments. The explosion caught 12 Zephyrian vessels in its blast radius, their shields overloading as superheated debris peppered their hulls. But this was only the beginning. The explosion sent thousands of asteroid fragments flying at tremendous speed toward the alien formation. Each piece of rock had been carefully positioned and the charges precisely calculated to create maximum devastation. As the fragments struck alien ships, they triggered secondary explosions that spread through the fleet like wildfire. "What is happening?" Kethvar demanded, as his formation began to dissolve into chaos. His sensor officer's voice was tight with panic. "Admiral, the humans have turned the asteroids into weapons. Multiple ships are reporting critical damage." More explosions rippled through the alien fleet as mining charges continued to detonate. Each blast sent more debris flying, creating a deadly storm of rock and metal that tore through shields and armor. Ships that had conquered star systems found themselves helpless against simple mining explosives used with devastating cleverness. From hidden bases carved into asteroids throughout the belt, human fighter squadrons launched into space. Lieutenant Colonel Ben Wright led the attack, his squadron of 30 fighters emerging from what had appeared to be solid rock. The fighters were small and fast, designed for hit-and-run tactics rather than direct confrontation. "Remember the plan?" Wright transmitted to his pilots. "Target their shield generators first, then their weapon systems. Stay mobile and don't give them time to lock onto you." The human fighters swarmed around the larger alien ships like angry insects, their weapons precisely targeting vulnerable points that Dr. Park's analysis had identified. Each fighter carried missiles designed to penetrate energy shields and disrupt power systems. Wright's fighter dove beneath a Zephyrian cruiser, its weapons firing in controlled bursts. The alien ship's shields flared and failed as the precisely Aimed shots overloaded key generators. Without shields, the massive vessel became vulnerable to follow-up attacks. Shield generator down on target 7, reported Lieutenant Jim Foster from Wright's wing. Moving to secondary targets. The battle spread throughout the asteroid belt as more human forces revealed themselves. What the aliens had thought was empty space was actually filled with hidden bases, concealed weapons platforms, and camouflaged military installations. Humanity had turned the entire asteroid belt into one massive trap. Dr. Susan Kelly worked from her laboratory on the Mars Orbital Facility, coordinating one of the most subtle attacks in the battle. Her team had developed a computer virus specifically designed to target Zephyrian technology, based on analysis of their communication systems. Virus deployment successful, Kelly reported to Earth Command. It's spreading through their communication network now. The virus didn't destroy alien systems immediately. Instead, it made tiny changes to their targeting computers, introducing small errors that would grow worse over time. Zephyrian weapons that had been perfectly accurate began to miss their targets by increasing margins. Commander Blake watched the battle from his mining ship as alien vessels burned around him. The massive fleet that had seemed invincible was now in complete disarray, with dozens of ships destroyed or crippled by human tactics they had never encountered. Right, status report, Blake requested. Approximately 400 enemy vessels destroyed or disabled, Wright replied. We're regrouping for the next phase of the attack. The human fighters pulled back to hidden bases as quickly as they had appeared, leaving the aliens to deal with continuing explosions and system failures. The carefully planned chain reaction was still spreading through their formation, and more ships were falling victim to debris strikes and secondary explosions. Admiral Kethvar stood on his command deck, surrounded by damage reports and casualty lists. In less than an hour, he had lost more ships than in his previous 5 campaigns combined. The humans were fighting like nothing he had ever encountered, using the environment itself as a weapon. How many ships have we lost? He asked grimly. 700 destroyed, Admiral, reported General Thexron. Another 200 are too damaged to continue the advance. Kethvar felt something he had rarely experienced in his long military career: genuine fear. These humans weren't just more advanced than they had appeared. They were fighting with a level of tactical sophistication that matched or exceeded his own forces. Sir, his communications officer called out. We're receiving reports from throughout the fleet. Their weapons are becoming increasingly inaccurate. Our targeting systems appear to be malfunctioning. The Admiral realized that even their communication networks had been compromised. The humans had somehow infected their entire fleet with some kind of technological plague that was making their weapons unreliable. Signal the fleet, Kethvar ordered. All ships advance at maximum speed. We must reach the inner system before these humans can prepare more surprises. But as the remaining alien ships accelerated toward Mars and Earth, they were leaving behind a trail of wreckage that would serve as a monument to human cleverness. The asteroid belt was now a graveyard filled with the hulks of ships that had once seemed unstoppable. Captain Blake opened a communication link to Earth Command. Admiral Sullivan, this is New Frontier, Phase 1 complete. The aliens took heavy casualties and their remaining ships are moving toward the inner system. Sullivan's voice came back filled with grim satisfaction. Well done, Tony. Fall back to secondary positions and prepare for Phase 2. As the battered Zephyrian fleet limped toward Mars, they had no idea that the asteroid belt had been only the first layer of Earth's defenses. Ahead of them waited weapons and tactics that would make their recent losses seem minor by comparison. Dr. Kelly's virus continued to spread through alien computer systems, making their weapons less accurate with each passing hour. The fighter squadrons regrouped at hidden bases, rearming for the next phase of the battle. And throughout the solar system, Admiral Kethvar's remaining fleet emerged from the asteroid belt, like wounded animals fleeing a trap. Of the 3,000 ships that had begun the advance, barely 2,000 remained operational. The rest floated as wreckage among the rocks, victims of human deception and tactical brilliance that had caught the Zephyrian commander completely off guard. Admiral, we're approaching the orbit of the 4th planet, reported his navigation officer. Mars is directly ahead. Kethvar studied the tactical display that showed the red planet growing larger on his screens. Behind him lay a trail of destruction that represented the greatest military disaster in Zephyrian history. Ahead lay the human homeworld and whatever defenses they had prepared. "Sir," called his communications officer, "we're receiving multiple signals from the inner system. It appears the humans have a significant military presence between Mars and their homeworld." The Admiral's yellow eyes narrowed as he processed this information. The humans had already demonstrated that they were far more advanced than their broadcast had suggested. If they had been hiding their true military capabilities, what other surprises were waiting? "All ships maintain formation," Kethvar ordered. "Prepare for immediate engagement. We will not be caught off guard again." The Zephyrian fleet accelerated toward Earth, their weapons charged and shields at maximum power. Whatever the humans had waiting for them, overwhelming force would have to be enough. The Admiral could not afford another defeat. As the alien ships approached Earth's orbit, space around them seemed empty, except for the third planet's single large moon. Long-range sensors detected no significant military installations, no massive fleets waiting to intercept them. For a moment, Kethvar allowed himself to hope that perhaps the humans had expended their surprises in the asteroid belt. Then the moon moved. Admiral Patricia Stone stood on the command deck of the battleship, Freedom's Dawn, as it emerged from behind Luna's far side. The massive vessel was 5 miles long and bristling with weapons that had been designed specifically for space combat. Around her, hundreds of other human warships revealed themselves, dropping their stealth systems and forming battle formation. With practiced precision, Stone was a veteran commander who had spent 30 years preparing for this moment. Her silver hair was pulled back in a regulation military style, and her blue eyes held the cold determination of someone who had devoted her life to protecting humanity from exactly this threat. "All ships report ready for combat," announced her tactical officer, Commander Carl Rogers. "The fleet is in position." Stone nodded slowly as she watched the alien formation on her main display. Even after their losses in the asteroid belt, the invaders still outnumbered her fleet by more than 3-1. But numbers weren't everything in space combat. "Signal all ships," Stone commanded. "Engage at will. Show them what happens when they threaten Earth." The Freedom's Dawn opened fire with its main weapons, massive kinetic projectiles that traveled at a significant fraction of the speed of light. The human battleship's guns had been designed to punch through energy shields, by using pure mass and velocity rather than exotic energy fields. Throughout the human fleet, other ships followed suit. Hundreds of vessels that had been hidden behind the moon now revealed the true extent of Earth's military power. These weren't the crude chemical rockets and simple energy weapons that the aliens had observed in human broadcasts. These were warships, built with decades of secret research and development. The human ships used a combination of kinetic weapons, guided missiles, and tactical nuclear devices that had been specifically designed for fighting in the vacuum of space. While the aliens relied on energy shields and plasma weapons, humanity had chosen a different technological path that emphasized armor, redundancy, and overwhelming firepower. Captain Gary Martinez commanded the heavy cruiser Thunder Bay as it engaged a Zephyrian dreadnought 3 times its size. His ship's armor was composed of layered metals and ceramics that could absorb tremendous punishment, while his weapons were designed to exploit the weaknesses that Dr. Park's analysis had revealed. "Target their shield generators," Martinez ordered his weapons officer. "Multiple missile strikes, sequential detonation." The Thunder Bay's missiles streaked across space in carefully programmed attack patterns. Each warhead was designed to overload alien shield systems through precise timing and coordinated impact. As the shields failed, follow-up strikes with kinetic projectiles punched through the enemy hull. "Direct hit," reported the weapons officer. "Enemy ship is losing atmosphere and showing multiple hull breaches." But the human tactics went beyond simple ship-to-ship combat. Colonel Frank Lewis led a Marine assault force aboard specially designed boarding craft that could dock with alien vessels even during combat. His teams were equipped with powered armor and weapons designed for fighting in zero-gravity environments. "Boarding. Team Alpha, prepare for hull breach." Lewis commanded as his craft attached itself to a damaged Zephyrian cruiser. Remember, we want their ship intact if possible. Lewis was a combat veteran who had trained for decades in the art of ship-to-ship fighting. His Marines used cutting tools to breach the alien hull, then poured through the opening in disciplined formation. The Zephyrians they encountered were skilled warriors, but they had never fought humans in close-quarters combat. The aliens relied heavily on their advanced technology and energy weapons, but in the confines of a damaged spaceship, human adaptability and training gave them a significant advantage. Lewis's Marines used the ship's own corridors and compartments as cover, fighting with a level of tactical flexibility that the more rigid Zephyrian military doctrine couldn't match. Ship secured, Lewis reported after 30 minutes of fierce fighting. We have control of their engineering section and main computer core. Throughout the battle, similar boarding actions were taking place as human Marines captured alien vessels and turned them against their former allies. The Zephyrians found themselves fighting not only the human fleet, but also their own ships that had been seized and repurposed. Admiral Kethvar watched his forces crumble with growing desperation. The human fleet was smaller than his remaining Armada, but they were fighting with weapons and tactics that his forces seemed unable to counter effectively. Every advantage that Zephyrian technology should have provided was being neutralized by human ingenuity. "Admiral," reported General Thexron, "we've lost another 200 ships. The humans are using our own vessels against us." Kethavar realized that this battle was already lost. His mighty invasion fleet was being systematically destroyed by an enemy that had prepared for this confrontation with a level of detail that bordered on supernatural. Every human tactic seemed designed specifically to exploit Zephyrian weaknesses. "Signal the fleet," he ordered with bitter defeat in his voice. "All ships retreat to safe distance. We must regroup and develop new strategies." But Captain Diane Foster had other plans for the alien admiral. Foster commanded a special operations unit aboard the stealth ship Shadow Dancer, a vessel designed specifically for infiltrating enemy formations. Her mission was to capture Admiral Kethvar alive and extract intelligence about other potential threats to humanity. "Target acquired," Foster reported to Admiral Stone. "The enemy flagship is attempting to withdraw, moving to intercept." Foster was an expert in covert operations who had spent years studying alien technology and tactics. Her ship used advanced stealth systems to approach the Zephyrian flagship undetected, appearing on sensors as nothing more than space debris. The Shadow Dancer attached itself to the enemy ship's hull, using magnetic clamps. Then Foster's team began cutting through the armor with specialized tools. Within minutes, they had opened a breach large enough for a small assault force to enter the alien vessel. "Boarding successful," Foster transmitted. Moving toward the command section, her team fought their way through the ship's corridors, using their knowledge of Zephyrian ship design to avoid major resistance points. The aliens they encountered were demoralized by their losses and offered only sporadic resistance to the highly trained human special forces. Foster herself led the assault on the command deck, using stun weapons to incapacitate the enemy officers before they could destroy critical intelligence. When the smoke cleared, Admiral Kethvar found himself a prisoner aboard his own flagship. "The conquest of Earth is over," Foster told the captured alien commander. "Now you're going to tell us about every other threat that might be heading our way." As the surviving Zephyrian ships fled toward the outer system, they left behind a battlefield littered with the wreckage of their invasion force. Of the 3,000 ships that had arrived with such confidence, fewer than 500 remained operational. The rest had been destroyed or captured by human forces that had proven far more capable than anyone had imagined. Admiral Stone watched the retreat from her command deck with grim satisfaction. The immediate threat to Earth had been neutralized, but she knew that this was only the beginning. The aliens had come from somewhere, and there might be others following behind them. "Signal Earth Command," Stone ordered. Phase 1 of planetary defense is complete. Beginning Phase 2, intelligence gathering and preparation for counterattack. Commander Rogers looked at her with surprise. "Counterattack?" Admiral Kethvar sat in a human detention cell aboard his own flagship, now under the control of Captain Foster's Special Operations Team. The proud Zephyrian commander who had conquered 17 star systems was now a prisoner of the very species he had come to enslave. His yellow eyes burned with rage and humiliation as he contemplated the magnitude of his defeat. "The interrogation will begin shortly," Foster informed him through the cell's communication system. "You can make this easy or difficult, but either way you're going to tell us what we need to know." Foster had spent the past 6 hours studying captured Zephyrian technology and intelligence files. What she had discovered painted a disturbing picture of a vast alien empire that viewed other species as nothing more than resources to be exploited or obstacles to be eliminated. "My government will never negotiate with primitives," Kethvar snarled. "The hegemony will send another fleet larger than the first. Your victory here means nothing." Foster smiled coldly. "We'll see about that." Unknown to the captured admiral, his defiant words were exactly what human intelligence had been hoping to hear. Commander Steve Murphy, Earth's top intelligence analyst, was already implementing a plan that would turn Kethvar's arrogance into humanity's greatest strategic advantage. Murphy worked from a secure facility beneath the Swiss Alps, surrounded by the most advanced communication and computer systems on Earth. His team had been monitoring alien transmissions since the first ships arrived, learning their language and breaking their encryption codes with remarkable speed. "The alien communication protocols are surprisingly vulnerable," Murphy reported to Admiral Sullivan. "Their technology is advanced, but they've grown complacent. They never expected to encounter a species capable of matching their capabilities." Murphy's plan was elegant in its simplicity. Instead of allowing Kethvar to send a warning about human military strength back to the Zephyrian hegemony, Earth's intelligence services would craft their own message. The aliens would receive a transmission claiming complete victory, and the successful conquest of humanity. "Begin transmission," Murphy ordered his technical team. "Use Admiral Kethvar's personal communication codes and ship identification." The false message that reached Zephyrian space painted a picture of total triumph. According to the fabricated report, the human species had surrendered immediately upon seeing the might of the hegemony fleet. Earth was now under alien control, its population enslaved and its resources being harvested for the Empire. Light years away, in the capital system of the Zephyrian hegemony, military leaders received the news with satisfaction. Supreme Commander Veltar reviewed the reports from what appeared to be Admiral Kethvar's victorious fleet with approval. "Excellent," Veltar said to his assembled staff. "Another primitive species has been brought into the Empire. Begin preparing colonization fleets for immediate deployment to the human system." The Zephyrian leadership had no reason to doubt the authenticity of the message. It contained all the proper identification codes and followed standard reporting procedures. The idea that a primitive species could have intercepted and falsified their communications was beyond their imagination. "How large should the colonization force be?" asked General Mordek, the hegemony's chief of colonial operations. "The humans offered no resistance worth mentioning," Veltar replied, consulting the false reports. "A standard colonization fleet should be sufficient. 500 transport ships and a light escort force." As the Zephyrians began preparing their colonization fleet, humanity was engaged in its own massive mobilization effort. Dr. Rachel Green led a team of scientists in reverse engineering captured alien technology, while Admiral Stone supervised the construction of Earth's first interstellar warships. "The alien hyperspace technology is actually quite elegant," Green reported from her laboratory. "With some modifications, we should be able to adapt it for our own vessels within 6 months." Green was a physicist who specialized in exotic propulsion systems. The captured Zephyrian ships had provided her with working examples of faster-than-light travel technology that human science had only theorized about. By combining alien engineering with human innovation, her team was developing hybrid systems that would be superior to either technology alone. In hidden shipyards throughout the solar system, construction proceeded at a frantic pace. Admiral Joe Carter supervised the building of humanity's first star fleet from a facility carved into the dwarf planet Ceres. The ships taking shape in his yards were designed for one purpose: carrying the war to the aliens who had threatened Earth. "How many ships will be ready for the first mission?" Admiral Sullivan asked during a secure video conference. 50 heavy cruisers and 200 destroyers," Carter replied, each one equipped with hybrid human-alien technology and armed with weapons specifically designed to exploit Zephyrian weaknesses. The human fleet being constructed was unlike anything either species had built before. The ships combined alien, hyperspace drives with human kinetic weapons, Zephyrian energy shields with Earth's advanced armor systems. The result was a new class of warship that represented the best of both civilizations. Captain Foster completed her interrogation of Admiral Kethvar after extracting detailed information about Zephyrian military capabilities, star charts showing the location of their homeworld, and intelligence about other species within their empire. The alien commander had proven surprisingly cooperative once he realized that resistance was futile. The hegemony controls 47 star systems, Foster reported to Earth Command. They have a standing military force of approximately 50,000 warships, but most are spread throughout their territory on garrison duty. The intelligence revealed that while the Zephyrian Empire was vast, it was also overextended. Their forces were committed to controlling dozens of conquered worlds, leaving their core systems relatively lightly defended. It was a weakness that humanity intended to exploit. 3 months after the failed invasion of Earth, the first human scouts departed for Zephyrian space. The ships were small and stealthy, designed to gather intelligence about alien defenses and confirm the accuracy of Kethavar's information. Captain Lisa Wells commanded the lead scout ship Pathfinder, as it made humanity's first journey to another star system. Hyperspace jump successful, Wells reported as her ship emerged near the edge of the Zephyrian home system. Beginning reconnaissance of alien military installations. What Wells discovered exceeded Earth's most optimistic projections. The Zephyrian homeworld was defended by fewer than 200 warships, most of them older vessels that had been relegated to rear area duties. The majority of their fleet was still spread throughout their empire, unaware that humanity even existed as a threat. Target confirmed, Wells transmitted back to Earth via quantum communication link. Minimal defenses detected. The way is clear for the main assault. 6 months after the invasion of Earth, humanity launched its first interstellar military campaign. Admiral Carter led a fleet of 300 ships through hyperspace toward the Zephyrian home system, carrying with them the collective anger of a species that had been marked for extinction. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the alien system in perfect formation. The ships that had been built in Earth's hidden yards represented the culmination of human military engineering, each one an instrument of precisely calculated revenge. Signal the fleet, Carter commanded from his flagship, the newly christened UES Retribution. All ships prepare for assault. Today we show the galaxy what happens when someone threatens humanity. The Zephyrian defenders were caught completely unprepared. Their intelligence services had reported the complete conquest of the human species. The idea that Earth survivors could have built an interstellar fleet and traveled here for revenge was beyond their comprehension. As human weapons opened fire on alien installations, the last transmission from Admiral Kethvar's original invasion fleet finally made sense. The prisoners aboard the captured flagship had warned that humanity was more dangerous than anyone realized, but their message had been dismissed as the desperate lies of defeated enemies. Supreme Commander Veltar watched. His homeworld's defenses crumble under human assault with growing horror. The ships attacking his system were using advanced technology that combined the best of Zephyrian engineering with innovations that his scientists had never imagined. How is this possible? Veltar demanded of his staff. The humans were conquered months ago. But even as his capital burned, the truth was becoming clear. The species that the hegemony had marked for easy conquest had instead become its nemesis. Humanity had not only survived the initial invasion, but had learned from it, adapted to it, and turned it into the foundation for their own expansion into the galaxy. The final scene of Earth's first interstellar war played out in the ruins of the Zephyrian Command Center. As human marines secured the alien capital, they discovered the colonization fleet that had been prepared for Earth's enslavement. 500 transport ships loaded with alien civilians who had expected to find a conquered world waiting for them. Admiral Carter stood in the destroyed command center, surrounded by the wreckage of an empire that had thought itself invincible.